Welcome back to Seed Time and Harvest. Today we're going to talk about how to build a survival pantry with long-lasting food that you would purchase from the supermarket. Now there are two ways to go about that. One, you can purchase extra of food items that you already purchased for your family to use on a day-to-day basis. Or two, you can purchase meal ready-to-eat survival kits. These you will store and only open in cases of emergency, and these typically have a shelf life of 20 to 25 years. But before we get into that, let's look at some basic criteria to consider when shopping for such foods from the supermarkets. These are the 5 basic criteria to consider when you're shopping and stocking up your food pantry. First, you want to think about the shelf life. Things that have a longer shelf life, things that store easy, things that are easy to prepare, items that are calorie dense, and whether you have any dietary restriction. On the note of dietary restrictions, you go to the supermarket and you see peanut butter on sale, 20 cents a jar. Wow, sounds too good to be true. So let me empty the shelf of peanut butter. Take it all home and realize, well, I can't eat peanut butter. I'm allergic to it. My family doesn't eat it. So that will be a waste of space in your pantry and a waste of money. So consider your dietary restrictions before you make any mass purchases for your food storage. Also consider the shelf life of items. There are certain items that you would buy that, okay, within a month you have to eat it and it's gone, or you have to throw it out. When you want a survival pantry, the longer the shelf life, the better it is. And that brings me to the expiration date. Now, if you were to go and you purchase garbanzos, say 1 can of garbanzo will expire in August of 2025, and the next can of garbanzo will expire in December of 2025. You want to get the one that has the longest shelf life so it will store better for you. Now, we want to think about this method when you talk about shelf life, okay? It's FIFO, F-I-F-O, first in, first out. The garbanzo that you purchased 2 months ago may be the first garbanzo on your shelf. What you'll want to do is you want to put that garbanzo at the entrance to your cabinet. So when you open your cabinet, that's the first garbanzo you see. That's the first one in. Every other garbanzo you purchase after that will go towards the back of your pantry. So you have a rotation. First in, first out. That's a principle the supermarkets use because they know, okay, the consumer will come in. The first thing they see on the shelf, that's what they're going to take, right? And the ones that have the longer expiration date, they'll put at the back. That's where you will be shopping, at the back of the shelf and not at the front. And that's how you're going to stock your pantry at home. Things that expire first goes towards the front. They will get eaten and used up faster than the ones that are at the back, which have the longer shelf life. Things that are easy to store. When we consider storage, the biggest enemy of any survival pantry is space. Think about this bag of potato chips. Most of you will gravitate towards a bag of potato chips versus a bag of beans, right? Now, the bag of beans will be best for your survival pantry. Why? It's easy to store. It's more calorie dense. It gives you a lot of nutrition. This is 4 pounds of beans, and this is 5 ounces of potato chips. They're about the same size. The bags are about the same size, but this is all air. You'll finish this in 1 day, if that long. This will feed you for about 2 months. So this is what you will consider when you think of easy to store. Next, things that are easy to prepare. While your beans will last a long time in your pantry, about 25 years, if you think of an emergency where the power goes out, the dry beans, yes, even though they last longer, it will be a lot harder to prepare in such a crisis. So consider things that are easy to prepare. You can just pop open a can of beans and you can use it right away. So you want to have a variety in your pantry. Dried goods as well as goods that will be easy to prepare. All right. And also the nutrition. What will give me more nutrition, the beans or the potato chips? Okay, because the beans are going to have a lot more protein, a lot more carbs, and a lot more fiber. All right. Next, calorie dense. Beans is more dense than the potato. Okay, so the 5 things again to consider. You want to think of the shelf life, things that are easy to store, things that are easy to prepare, things that are calorie dense, and there are no dietary restrictions. The two restrictions that you may have when you are looking to build your pantry, the first would be your space and the next would be budget. When you think about the space that you have, of course, you know, our houses are so small nowadays, to be able to find that space that you can build a survival pantry may be limited. And that's why instead of packing our shelves with potato chips or things that are filled with air, we're going to use more dense food, such as your rice, your beans, anything that has a good density in terms of packaging, your cans, your boxes, and that will do well in a compact space. The second thing that is a big restriction towards survival pantry stocking is your budget. Now, gone were the days when I would be able to say, okay, I need 25 pounds of millet, and I would pay $40 for 25 pounds of millet. Now, it's not the same. Paying like $60, $20 difference for 25 pounds of millet. And for you to be able to say, okay, I want to stock a whole room with food that will keep my family for the next year or 2 years, it may be difficult when you consider, you know, our budget, because things are not the way they were. So how to overcome this? We go to the supermarket at least twice a month regardless. And what you can do is add a little extra, okay? You would buy 5 bags of beans or 2 cans of whatever it would be for the week or for 2 weeks. Instead of limiting yourself to 2 cans of beans, you're going to buy 2 extra, and that 2 extra is going to go towards your survival pantry. You would purchase 20 pounds of rice for that month. Buy another bag of 20 pounds rice. And so you build up your pantry little by little. Over time, you will have a good storage. Unless you have the budget to go out and stock up on a good amount of supplies, you know, start small and build your way up, because it will get overwhelming if you try to do everything all at once. So consider your space and consider your budget. A little more on the expiration date. Once that expiration date has arrived for certain of your food item, it doesn't mean that it's bad for you or it's going to hurt you. It just means that it's less fresh. The quality of it may have been reduced. And so you want to make sure you get in the habit of moving things around in your pantry. That rotation system, first in, first out, so that you don't end up with things being expired 2-3 years ago and then you have to discard it. I would say a safe period is about 6 months after the expiration date is good for use. Anything after that, you may want to discard it. But again, rotation of your pantry, the food items that you're bringing in, will reduce the need to throw anything out. There are 5 enemies to the shelf life of food. And what are these, you may be asking? Well, heat, light, moisture, oxygen, and pests. We've all had that, scenario where you bring something home and whether the weevils have infested it, there are moths, and you just have to throw it away. Well, I got my bag of beans home from the supermarket, and these pest larvae may already be in my beans, or I will put it in my pantry and there may be weevils already there waiting for this fresh bag of beans to enjoy. A good way to eliminate all those problems, all those enemies to your shelf life is Mylar bags. Off the bat, there is no light getting into my Mylar bag, right? There is no moisture getting in my bag. There is no oxygen. Why? Because I have an oxygen absorber already in place. And because there is no oxygen, guess what? There is no pest that's going to go in my bag and eat my beans. Now, I'm going to put my Mylar bag in a 5-gallon bucket in a cool environment in my house so that it can be safe from all the enemies of shelf life, ready for me to use whenever that time comes. On the note of purchasing items from the supermarket to add to your survival pantry, I just want to insert a warning there. Some food items should never be purchased. Why? Because it can be very dangerous for you and your family. Cans that are really badly dented should not be purchased. There is a thing called botulism. Botulism is actually a poisoning. And with that, I'm going to put in a warning there. Okay? Never use food from any containers that show possible botulism. Warning signs include leaking, bulging, or badly dented cans, cracked jars or jars with loose, bulging lids, canned food with foul odor, or any container that sprouts liquid after opening. Even a minuscule amount of botulism toxins can be deadly. Okay, so Anything that meets those requirements, you should not include in your food pantry. And I also want to add one more thing. If there's any rust on your can, avoid putting that in your long-term food pantry as well. Now look at this can. Do you know what's in it? I do, okay? If you go to the supermarket and you see a whole lot of unmarked jars for sale, don't buy it. It could be ham, it could be bacon, it could be, baked bean with pork. You don't know what is in it. So you want to make sure that your cans are properly labeled, the expiration date is clear before you include any of those things in your food pantry. The moment you've all been waiting for. What am I going to put in that pantry? What stores long? We talk about what not to include, but what do I put in there? Well, I'm going to go by the category of foods that you would put in your pantry, and I'll start with grains. These are the anchor of your pantry. They're versatile, they're nutritious, and they store well. So when I mention grains, I'm talking about your quinoa, your buckwheat, your rice, your flour, your dried corn, cornmeal, pasta. All these grains are very good to add to your pantry. Now, it's sad to say that I'm a fan of brown rice. Many of you may be a fan of brown rice, but unfortunately, brown rice does not store as long as your other grains. Why? Because it has a lot of oils in it, and the oil in the rice does cause it to go a little bit rancid after a time. So about 18 months you'll be able to store for. Anytime after that, you may have to put it in your freezer. That's the best way. And I know unless you have a big freezer space, it may not be ideal, but that's the only way to preserve your brown rice. Now, when you think of other rices that you can store, it is highly recommended to store your long grain, your short grain, or basmati rice. These are the best in terms of long-term storage. They almost never expire, but again, it's a type of rice that you store. Another downer for me, and maybe for you, is wheat flour. Wheat flour does not store as long and should not be included in your survival pantry. Whole all-purpose flour is best. You can get unbleached all-purpose flour. That's best, but the fat content of whole wheat makes it less ideal for food storage. So what I do is I stock up on wheat berries. Now, this is just the wheat prior to it being grounded. If you have a food mill or if you have a dry blade, Vitamix, or any high-powered machine that can actually mill these berries, you can get your flour that way. And these are a lot better in terms of storing for your grains. Another anchor to your pantry that you would want to include are your beans and your legumes, okay? These are not only fiber rich, but they have a good source of protein. They store well, and they will be very versatile. You can add them with anything from your garden or mix them with any of the grains that you'll be storing. And we haven't forgotten about the garden, right? Because you will have a working garden even while you're stocking up on your pantry. So what beans should we include? Navy beans, black beans, pinto beans, garbanzos, lentils. All of these are ideal for your food storage. You just put them in a 2-gallon bucket or a 5-gallon bucket with your Mylar bag and your oxygen absorber, and these will last a lifetime, okay? Along with your beans, we need to also consider your fats. Good fats that you can put in your pantry would be your nut butters, olive oil, coconut milk. These are a very good source of fats that will last about 1 to 2 years. You might be surprised by a meat substitute that you will add to your long-term food storage list. That's TVP, texturized vegetable protein. What it is, it's basically defatted soybean that's dehydrated. It stores well up to 20 years if stored properly. And as it says here, it makes delicious recipes, chilies, tacos, meatballs, and much more. Now it is very bland, leading on to the next subject of things that you will include, and those will be your spices. When you think of spice, all your dehydrated spices would be ideal for long-term food storage. If you have a working garden, of course, you're gonna have a lot of these in your garden as well. But what you can do is you can hang dry a lot of your spices and keep them for a long time, even dehydrate them, grind them up, and make your own powder. Along with those spices, you want to consider sugars, sweeteners that you may include. Now, I would not recommend sugar for long-term storage. Why? Because over time, your sugar is going to be like a block. Now, of course, you can break it apart and use it in your recipes, but I would prefer to include honey in my long-term storage. Honey almost never expires. It will crystallize though, but if that happens, what you'll do is you put your jar of honey in some warm water and it will return to its natural flowing state. Soy sauce is another good item for long-term storage, as well as maple syrup. Now, your maple syrup will require refrigeration after opening, but it does store a long time on the shelf. Just a recap of food items that you should store sparingly or avoid in your long-term pantry. Not to say that you're not going to include this in your regular shopping, but not to put in your long-term food storage, your emergency food storage. Those will be your brown rice, your whole wheat flour, your nuts, your granola. Why? Because of the high fat and the oil content. Also, absolutely no dented cans, nothing with rust, nothing with signs of botulism, because that will not be safe for your health. Okay, so these are things that you would absolutely avoid in your long-term food storage. The USDA recommends this amount of food for one person for 1 year, and that will include 400 pounds of grains, 60 pounds of beans or legumes, 16 pounds of powdered milk, whether it be coconut milk, almond milk, or soy milk in a powdered form, 10 quarts of oil, 1 gallon of honey or 16 pounds of sugar, and 8 pounds of salt. This is the basic requirements for your survival for 1 year. Of course, you want to have water always on hand. No matter, you're not limited on the amount of water that you will store, because you're going to need water for drinking, for washing your face, brushing your teeth, for cooking. So the more water you can store, the better it would be for you and your family. The last thing I want to touch on is some food items from what I have here that almost never expire given the correct condition. First, I'm going to talk about your water. Even though you see an expiration date on your bottle, this expiration is not for the water. It's actually for the plastic. And so the harder plastic you have, it would be a longer shelf life for your water. So that's one. The next is your honey. Honey almost never expires. Again, it will crystallize, but nothing a little bit of warm water won't be able to fix. Your soy sauce does not expire. Vanilla, especially pure vanilla, you want to make sure that it is a pure form and has no added sugar. That almost never expires. Cornstarch, salt, of course, your beans and rice. These items, 2, 4, 6, 8 items on my table right here that you can put in your pantry with no expiration date. Again, given that they're stored in the correct manner. You'll have your water for drinking, to cook your beans and your rice. You have the little salt that you can put in your rice and your beans, and soy sauce. Okay, and maybe that's all you have on hand to put in your beans, and you have a complete meal to last you a lifetime. Again, one stored correctly. Now, I want to give a little bit of a warning in terms of food storage. You want to make sure that you avoid heat. Your canned goods should not be stored above your stove. You know, store them away from any source of light. When you have your long-term pantry, many people would think, okay, the garage will be the best place to put my long-term pantry, but it gets both extremes of heat. The heat from the summer and the cold from the winter. Okay, so 2 extremes in temperatures rather. Heat and cold. So you want to find a nice room that can remain a constant temperature, and that's where you have your long-term food storage. You have your buckets that you can stack up, you have your shelves that you can pack with items, and you start working on your pantry. 1 item at a time, maybe little by little, step by step, with God's help, you can build up a store, because we are told to stock up. Okay, a time of crisis is coming. We know not when that will be, but getting ready at the beginning of the crisis is going to be too late. Okay, so get yourselves ready, get your items listed, what your family likes. Don't think about what is cheap, but what you like to eat, and start storing. Again, if you have any questions, leave them in the comment below. Don't forget to like, to share, to subscribe. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I thank you for joining us on Seed Time and Harvest. Until next time, bye.